Hello and welcome to this introduction to the IELTS writing test, brought to you by Learning English 365. My name is Donna, and over the next hour or so, I'm going to help you understand the format of the test, including the difference between the general training modules and the academic. And I will also explain to you a little bit about the assessment criteria that the examiners use when they're marking your exam. So, you ready? Let's get started. Some of the things that you need to know about the IELTS at a glance. There are two parts to it. Whichever test you're doing, whether you're doing general or academic, there are two questions that you need to answer. You'll have a question paper and an answer sheet if you are doing the paper-based exam. Obviously, lots of countries now offer a computer-based exam assessment. So if you're doing that, obviously you'll just type your answers onto the computer. You can make notes on the question paper, but the only notes that the examiner will actually mark is on your answer booklet. Okay, so that's important to bear in mind if you do make some notes to help your thought process as you go through. You can write in pen or pencil. People have different preferences, and of course you can correct things if you need to. Just make sure your corrections are very clearly labeled that it is a correction. The examiner can see that it's a correction. And one of the most important things about the exam is you cannot use a dictionary or any online translation device, websites, no Google Translate here. Okay, so all of your writing will be your own work. As I said, there are two questions that you have to answer, and part two carries more points than part one. It's actually twice as important as part one. And the whole test will last for an hour. So the recommendation, this is not mandatory, but the recommendation is that you spend about 20 minutes on the first part and you spend 40 minutes on part two. You don't want to spend too much on part one so that you don't have time to answer part two properly. There are different tests for part one, or whether you're doing academic or general training. For the academic, you're often you have to explain what you can see in a diagram or a table or a graph, something like that. And in the general training, you will have to write a letter of something to explain a situation or maybe to complain about something. For part two, although both tests require you to write an essay of some description. And while the subject matters can be similar, they are often different questions. But in part two, you'll be asking to write an essay, maybe giving an opinion on something, weighing up advantages or disadvantages of a situation that you've been given. Okay. So have a think about your own writing, the types of writing that you do every day. In your own language, this is. Do you write reviews on review websites? Do you have to write informally to colleagues or friends? Do you have to do presentations as part of your work or study? Do you have to produce reports or guidance or policy documents for your work? Do you write formally, informally? Do you like writing for yourself? Is it one of your interests, your leisure activities? Do you write poems? Do you write stories? Are you comfortable expressing opinions as part of a formal essay? You will have to do that in part two of the IELTS writing test. And for those of you doing the academic modules, How comfortable are you analysing data presented in a figurative form, whether that's a graph or a table or some kind of diagram? Are you used to doing that? And if you're doing the general training, do you ever receive or write letters, whether that's through the post or as part of an email? Do you have to do that in English? Have you got much experience of doing it? What sort of language do you need to do all of those things? Very important that you can start thinking about your current skills and knowledge and what you need to build on in preparation for the test. Let's have a little bit of a closer look at part 1 now. So in the general training, you can see that candidates have to write a short letter, and they give you a minimum word count. They have 150 words. And as I said, in the academic module for part 1, you'll be given something, a diagram, a chart, a map, a graph, and you'll be asked to summarize what that is telling you and explain it. Now, are there any overall trends? What are the key differences? Whatever it is. And again, you've got 150 words minimum. It's very important you don't write less than 150 words, because if you do, you will be penalised. This is part of the test, is can you write 150 words? Can you plan your writing, to take into account the 150? And of course, you can go over that. But the key recommendation here is, don't forget, we're saying that you should only spend about 20 minutes on the first part of the test. So this isn't a race. This is not a competition to write the most words in 20 minutes. So if you do go over the word count, okay, maybe 15, 20 words, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that every single word, every single sentence you write is as accurate as you can make it. You will lose marks if you write 300 words and your grammar and vocabulary are not very good. So the test is, can you write accurately, clearly, etc., within 150 words? Can you explain your points? Minimum 150. And try not to go too far beyond that, because you won't have time, is really the advice there. In the second part of the test, for both general and academic, you will be asked to write an essay. And again, you've got a minimum word count of 250 words, as we've seen. And you'll be asked to explain your opinions and give ideas about a situation or problem that has been presented to you. And you have the same task. As I said, it's similar topics come up in both parts of the exam, not necessarily the exact same question. Have a look at some of the topics that are on the screen now. We've got 3 there that are presented to you. And as you can see already, they are the types of things that you'd be asked to write an essay on. And these are typical part 2 type subjects. Have a think about your own experience. Do you enjoy thinking about these types of questions, these topics? Do you find it easy to come up with a response to a question like this in a short space of time? Don't forget, you won't have a lot of time to prepare what you're going to say. So the first question, it's making a statement and asking if you agree. What kind of things would you say? And the second question is giving you a choice. It's saying, should the government take responsibility for protecting the earth, or should we all individually be responsible? And in the third question, it's specifically asking you for advantages and disadvantages of having a small family, what kind of things would you say? And I think the important point to remember when you're preparing the kinds of structures and the vocabulary that you would use in these types of essays is to remember that this is not a test of your opinion. The examiners are not looking for a perfect opinion, or an opinion that matches their own. The test here is, can you explain your opinion in English? Can you give your answer and can you support it in well written, grammatically correct language? It's very important. Sometimes people get a little bit worried about, I don't really have a strong opinion about that. And again, it doesn't matter if you don't have a strong opinion either way on something. Yeah, you can spend your 250 words saying why. You can see both sides of an argument. It's totally fine. The test is, can you use the English language to explain your thought process and your opinion? You don't have to be firmly for or against something. It's very important to remember. So what is it? What's the IELTS writing test? What's it looking for? Okay. And how do you score a high, how do you obtain a high band score? We will look at the exact criteria in a moment, but essentially what the IELTS writing test is asking you, or is challenging you to do, is to understand and respond to a question or task. And can you do that? And how well do you do it? How well do you organize and link your ideas? Have you written in paragraphs? Are there connecting words? And how well do you use vocabulary and grammar in written form? Okay, we often write very differently to how we speak, don't we? Like every other part of the IELTS test, your written exam will be graded on a scale of 0 if you don't sit the exam at all, up to a 9. An expert user of the language, got full command of all aspects of the language. And we've got an example here that candidates who interpret the tasks well, so do well on A, but who cannot use advanced vocabulary and grammar without mistakes, C, will get a band 6, probably around that mark. And a native English speaker will get probably an 8.5 or a 9. So think about, what do you need to get? Again, it's very important that you understand what it is that you need to achieve. What band score do you need to get in order to meet the requirements of your organisation or university, the country you're wishing to migrate to. It's very important you understand, because there are differences between the countries and also differences between organisations and universities. So it's always very important that you understand what you need in your particular circumstances. So keeping those thoughts in your head, those ABC ideas, think about your own language. Now, if you had to assess how well someone wrote your language, what kind of things would you look for? Obviously, I think you'd look for their vocabulary, their grammar, their punctuation, their sentence structure. The word orders are different in different languages, aren't they? The flow of ideas, can you follow what the person's written to you? Is the tone appropriate? If they're writing to you in a formal setting, for example, as part of a job application, or just as part of a application process, Are they using appropriate language, or are they talking to you as though they're speaking to their friend in a coffee shop? Yeah. And it's what they've written. Is it factually accurate? You know, if for example, part one of the academic written test will ask you to describe, explain what a graph or a diagram or a map or chart is telling you. So whatever you say, as well as having to be grammatically correct, actually has to be accurate. If you've said the graph shows something, then it needs to show it. You know, it has to be there in front of you. So yes, you'd be looking for those things if you were reading someone's writing in your language, if your language wasn't their first language. So down to the details now then. The 4 criteria that are used for marking the IELTS writing test, whether you're general training or whether you're academic, they're the same criteria apply. And that is task achievement, that is lexical resource, your vocabulary, your grammatical range and accuracy. It's not all about going for the easy option, the simple structures. And coherence and cohesion. Okay? How well do things flow and hang together? Let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail now. Task achievement. So what does that mean? It's all about showing that you've understood the question and you answer it in its entirety. You give a complete answer. On the screen here, we've got a question. Okay, we've got an essay question. More and more people are visiting foreign countries each year. What are the advantages and disadvantages of international travel in today's world? And underneath it, we've got a sample answer from a candidate. Felicia, have a read of what Felicia said. What do you think? How well do you think she answered the question? Look again at the question. It asked for the advantages and disadvantages of international travel in today's world. Felicia never mentions any disadvantages. She just talks about why it's a good thing, why travel is a good thing. She doesn't answer the question in its entirety. So this answer would score poorly in terms of task achievement because it doesn't answer the question in full. In other aspects, she does do quite well. She's got some nice statements, so what people generally say. And she talks about why she thinks it's a good thing. So that is good, but it doesn't answer the second part of the question. The other thing I will point out here is the question asks, what are the advantages? And Felicia paraphrases that. Instead of repeating advantages back, she doesn't say, so travel is an advantage for the world. She says, so travel is a good thing for the world. So she's not just repeating the vocabulary that's in the question. She's also thinking of other ways to say the same thing. And that is also very, very important. But we'll come on to that again very soon. Lexical resource, that's your vocabulary. And just get a high score, you need a large vocabulary. Okay? Like I said, whether you're paraphrasing the exam question, so you're not using exactly the same words that the question uses, or even in your own writing, you're not repeating the same words and phrases. You know, sometimes we explain a similar concept, but we can use different words to show the breadth of our knowledge of the English language. And it's very important to do that. So how good are you at spotting synonyms, you know, other terms that mean the same thing? We've got some words and phrases on the screen, and yeah, have a go now. Can you match the synonyms? Can you match the words on the left with a word on the right that means the same or has a similar meaning? So like, what's a word on the right hand column that means the same? Let's admire, happy, will be content, bigger, enlarged, as well, in addition, and shoddy. Well, we only have one left, don't we? I'm sure you knew it anyway. Mediocre. You will also know other words and phrases that mean the same as these. You know, there's often multiple ways of saying the same thing. And to score highly in the IELTS written test, you need to show a big range of vocabulary. Don't keep repeating the same words and phrases. How can you explain things in a different way? If you know you have a weakness here, then now's the time to start practicing that. Grammatical range and accuracy. In order to get a high band score in the IELTS writing test, you have to be able to form simple and complex sentences correctly. If you play it safe, if you know you've got a weakness in grammar and you decide just to stick to very short, simple sentences, you're not going to score highly in the IELTS written. It wants to see a range of sentence structures, tenses, verb uses, but you need to be able to do it correctly. So if you know that grammar is one of your weaknesses, then you need to start looking at it much more closely now. Have a look at the sentences that we have on the screen there. We've got 4 sentences. Each one of them has at least one mistake in it, a grammar mistake. Can you find it? Can you recognize it? Number 1. We don't need to, do we? It's just, please send me your latest price list. Number 2. There are 2 mistakes here. The first one is are. Okay? We've got an error here on subject-verb agreements. This should be is. It's singular. And why is it singular? You will know it's because we need to agree with the large number. And that is a singular concept. Okay, the agreement is not with immigrants, which is correct as a plural, a large number of immigrants, but we need to agree with the whole concept. and that is singular, a large number. So it shouldn't be are, it should be is. And the second problem here is we don't need of, and we don't say is here. It should be being. So in my opinion, the large number of immigrants is not a significant problem for our country, despite there being a shortage of housing at the moment. You're looking at the verb structure after despite in the second clause. It's very important that you get it properly. There are other ways of saying this that would be equally correct, but we're just picking out the errors that are in these sentences. Number 3. So we're talking about, there are 2 errors here. We're talking about the past tense, first of all, because we know we're talking about the following year. So we're obviously talking about years that have in the past. So is traveling is a present continuous, isn't it? So it can't be right if we're talking about the past. So it should be travelled. And also which is not correct here. You use which with a thing. We're talking about people. So you've got 2 options. You can use say who, or you could say that. But which, no, doesn't fit here. So the percentage of people who travelled by train in Japan, trying to use a phrasal verb here, and it's the wrong one. You can use grew, but you would follow it with by. So the percentage of people who travelled by train in Japan grew by 20% the following year, or maybe increased by. And number 4, there's one mistake here. And it's the use of the modal verb can. You know, it doesn't fit with the sentence. This is if you're talking about somebody feeling strongly about something, you need should or must, you know, not can. Looking at those sentences again, which of those are simple sentences and which are complex? The only simple sentence is the first one, okay? All the others are complex sentences. And if you think about how we write generally, we will always have a mix of simple and complex sentences in our writing. You know, if you just write in simple sentences, then you find that your writing is very staccato. And if you write in too many complex sentences and one complex sentence after the other, then it actually becomes quite difficult it can be difficult to follow what you're saying. You know, naturally, we mix the 2. And this is what you need to aim for in your IELTS written test. But of course, you need to do it correctly. So coherence and cohesion then. This is about how your ideas flow together. You know, do you use clauses to link one idea to another? Are you taking your reader through that journey so that it's signposting for them where you are going next? This is what coherence and cohesion means. Does it flow properly? We've got an example of some writing on the screen. Have a look at it. What do you think of it? Do you think the ideas in this text are linked together? What would you do to improve this text? What do you think? I think there are a few things here. There are no linking words or clauses. It's just one sentence, one sentence, one sentence, one sentence. And the ideas, when you read them, they go there, then they go there, then they go there. It's almost random. Okay? There's no linking with ideas. The writer also is just stating facts. There's no opinion. You will always be asked for your opinion. And there is no opinion in this piece of writing. And finally, I would suggest that the last two sentences here, from in the countryside to the end, it's a completely different idea. So I think it should be a new paragraph. It's talking about farmers. Right? The first set of ideas are about clean air, or how not clean the air is, and what's being done about that. Okay, and then we're moving on to farmers, completely different. They should be separated out into different paragraphs. So I think you're starting to see, how you can make your writing clearer, flow better. Where are the connecting words? Where are the words that link ideas together? So your reader knows where you're going with something. Those little signposts that we give in our writing. Are we changing direction? Are we going to make a point that shows we strongly agree with something? Or are we going to show a contrasting opinion? Lots of ways that we could do that. So I suppose the $64 million question, isn't it? How good does your English have to be to pass? Well, as we know already, there is no pass or fail mark on the IELTS, any of the IELTS tests. Okay, the IELTS is about measuring your level of English. And in truth, very advanced learners will normally get a 7 or an 8. Even if they make a few mistakes. Okay, we're all human, and we can make mistakes in anything we do. And generally an intermediate student might get a 5 or 6. What the examiners are looking for in the IELTS is your ability to understand information and create a well-written response to it. Measuring all those things we've just looked at, your vocabulary, your grammar, your cohesion. Have you actually answered the question? Did you understand what the situation you were presented with was about? And did you respond appropriately to it? A mistake is only considered serious if you make them all the way through, if your whole written piece is littered with mistakes, or if the examiner can't understand what you're writing because of the mistakes you've made. Yeah, so the odd slip here and there, okay, you may make those. You should try and avoid it, but, like I said, we're all human. But if your writing is littered with errors, then you are not going to score highly on the written test. And this also comes down to your spelling, with your using the vocabulary. It's all about as well spelling things correctly. You will be penalised if your spelling is poor, even if the rest of it is good. And the other important point to note about those 4 criteria is that they're all weighted equally. Okay, so please don't think that you can make up bad grammar with amazing vocabulary. It doesn't work like that either. Each part of it, each criteria has to be spot on to get those high grades. So what kinds of things can you do to make sure that you get a high score? You've got some suggestions on the screen. Which ones of these do you think are sensible, and which of these do you think are not very reasonable suggestions or practical? The first one, read short opinion pieces about current issues today in newspapers and magazines. Absolutely correct. That will help you preparing for your exam. And why is that? Because it will give you ideas for structure. It will give you ideas about how to express opinions. It will give you vocabulary ideas. Okay? So very, very important that you start reading these kinds of articles if you don't already. B, review the vocabulary used for describing charts and graphs. If you're doing the academic test, yes. Okay. How do you describe? What language do we use when we're analysing something? Do you know that Lexis? Have you revised it? If you don't know, then yes, now is the time to get to grips with it. Read some academic periodicals that do this kinds of things. Make sure you know the vocabulary and how you use the structures, within an explanation. C, use synonyms for words in the examiner's questions. Absolutely. Try, this is where you can show off, paraphrase the words that the examiner has used, so that will help show that also that you've understood what the question is asking you. And also use synonyms for your own words. Try not to repeat the same words and phrases all the way through your written text. Use long words even if I'm not sure what they mean. No, never, never, never use a word that you don't know what it means. You may be lucky, you may spell it right, and you may get the right context. But if you're not really sure about it, you may use it in the wrong context, or you may put it in the wrong place in a structure, or within a phrase. And that will undermine the rest of your writing if you do that. So please don't use any words that you don't know what they mean. Read the questions very carefully. 100% yes, this goes throughout the IELTS test. You must read the question carefully because you will be marked here on your achievement. Okay, so how well did you answer it? So you have to answer all parts of it. And we saw an example earlier where someone had not covered disadvantages when they were asked for advantages and disadvantages. Very important to read the question carefully so you can show you understand what is being asked of you, but that you also then answer the question accurately. Try to memorize questions and answers before the exam. No, never, because you don't know what's going to come up in the exam. So it's a waste of time. And even if you had some ideas, if you can research the kinds of issues, the topics that come up again and again in the IELTS, but you have to answer the exact question that's been asked. So, for example, if the question is something about computers, and you say, "Oh, I know, I learned some things about computers," and you just write down your pre-prepared essay about computers, then you're unlikely to answer the exact question that's been asked, that may be about children's use of computers or social media or something like that. So yes, look up vocabulary, the kinds of vocabulary we use when explaining advantages, disadvantages, using strong opinions, neutral opinions, how we link ideas from one to the other, how we can structure essays into paragraphs, and how we can signpost the reader's way through it. Yes to all of those things, but actually trying to memorize essays after essay, no. It's not worth it, and it won't do you any favors. It will waste your important preparation time. And allow time to check my work before the 60 minutes are up. Yes. Okay. We strongly recommend that you spend 20 minutes on the first part and 40 minutes on the second, and include within that time to reread what you've written so you can correct your own mistakes. Okay? You are allowed to make corrections. So make sure you've built in time so you can read through your own writing, and you can review it, and you can correct any mistakes that you make. Absolutely crucial. And I will repeat again, do not spend too much time on part one. Be very strict with yourself on your time management and also around your word count. And finally, some reflection for you. Do you enjoy writing? Do you write much? If you're a university student or you're hoping to go to university, then you'll be used to writing essays and writing assignments. But if you're migrating for a different reason, the job that you do doesn't require you to do much writing, then this may be something that you really do need to start working on. Based on your own knowledge of your own learning up to now, which parts of this test do you think will be the hardest for you? Do you need to work on grammar? Do you need to work on spelling or vocabulary? And which skills do you think you need to improve the most? Where is it worth your time? Prioritize what it is that you need so that you can do your best work when you get to that exam. So that was just a brief introduction to the IELTS written exam. Learning 365 is here to help you on your IELTS journey. You've got our full contact details on the screen if you need any help or advice on the written part of the exam or any other parts of the IELTS if you need help to prepare for it. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I really hope to see you in the classroom in the very near future. Bye-bye.